Hello, folks. Great that you're able to join us again as we look at the ancestors of the faith for us in our study here at St. Mary's Sunday School. So, we sometimes try to think about the saints as those who show us the way, how to better follow Jesus. So, in the same way that if you're going somewhere with mom and dad and you're not quite sure the direction, you're not quite sure the way to get there, maybe you actually take them by the hand, or maybe they show you, they walk with you and they show you the route to go. And that's a little bit what the saints do us. If we want to follow Jesus and love Jesus better, we look to some of the saints, our ancestors in the faith, and they show us the way to do that. Today I want to talk about a woman who lived about 1,000 years ago. Her name was Margaret, Saint Margaret of Scotland, we sometimes say. But I want to introduce her by talking about something that maybe you're familiar with in your own situation. I suspect that many of you are familiar with what a refugee is or an exile is. Sometimes we see them in the news. Sometimes we see their images of people traveling by foot over rough country, over a long distance to try to get away from maybe a war in their own land, where they're in their own home where they come from, or maybe famine. There's not enough food there and they're going to starve. And so they try to escape that bad situation to try to go to another country so they can actually live a healthy, safe kind of life. So sometimes we see them walking over long distances. Sometimes we see them in boats as well, traveling over the seas trying to get away. And maybe in your own situation, maybe in school, you have some kids in your school or in your class who have traveled to live in Canada from another country, who've come to Canada because we're a safer place for them to live and to grow up. Well, Margaret, the person we're going to think about today, is actually someone who lived as a refugee, as an exile. She was born in England. I'll show you the map here. That's that green part here, just off of Europe. She was born in England, but when she was very young, her family had to escape England. Her father was the prince, her grandfather was a king, but sometimes there were things like wars between people who wanted to be king, and so her family had to escape. It was too dangerous for them to stay in England. So they went to Europe, they went to Hungary, and she grew up in Hungary. But after a while, things changed back home in England, and it became apparent that maybe her father could go back to England. It would be safer to go back to England, and he actually might have become the next king after some of these troubles settled down. So they traveled back to England, but unfortunately, he died shortly after they got there. And so she had to escape a second time. But this time, she didn't go back to Hungary. She actually went up north. So if green is the England part of this map, the part at the top is Scotland. So she escaped by going up to Scotland. And in Scotland, she met her husband. His name was Malcolm. So this is her arriving, and this is Malcolm greeting her. And Malcolm fell in love with her, and they got married, and they raised a family. And she was, of course, because he was the king, she became the Queen of Scotland. And she was a very faithful queen, a very caring, very loving queen, a queen who tried to serve Jesus by serving other people. So you can imagine the life of a king or a queen, lots of servants, lots of people to sort of take care of you, lots of people do all the things you want them to do, to do your orders, you give the orders and they follow the orders. But she was a very different kind of queen because she actually cared for people rather than to be cared for. In fact, the story is told that at large events, she and her husband would serve their guests rather than be served by the servants. The story is also told that she cared for 9 young children who had no parents. This is a nice icon that shows that. It's Margaret of Scotland with a young girl with a bowl of food. These were children whose parents had died. They were orphans, as they were called, and she cared for them so that they would actually be able to survive. They would actually be able to grow up and to be healthy as well. And there's also lots of stories about the way in which Margaret cared for the poor, way in which she gave money to help feed the poor, clothe the poor. But there's also wonderful images of stories about how Margaret helped by even washing their feet. This is an image of Margaret kneeling before a poor man, a beggar, and washing his feet. Rather than sitting on a throne and having other people take care of her needs, she was very concerned to take care of the needs of others, to use her position to help other people out. So we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about Margaret a bit later on, but she was obviously a very different kind of queen. And Janice has a craft, I think, which is appropriate to someone who was a queen.
I thought we would make some very simple crowns. So what I've got is a piece of paper which I've folded in half, and I've cut some triangles out of it to make the points of the crown. I'll just grab my scissors and we'll finish it off here. There you go. I found some sparkly paper, but you could use wrapping paper or white paper that you decorate. There's all kinds of possibilities you could do. And then It's really simple. You're just going to tape together your two pieces. Get some help with the tape. And try to make it fit the size of your head so that you can wear it. You might have to trim it up a little bit if you want to, just to make sure it fits. And one more over here to make it. And then you can use other paper or other things you have, stickers, feathers, or anything like that, and you can put them on your crown as decorations. But this one doesn't really show up well in the camera, but I have other sparkly paper that I've...
Here, I'll give you another piece of paper.
Thank you very much. I have some...
There we go.
Perfect. Other things that you can decorate your crowns with. But I really want to talk about Margaret and the crown, because Margaret was a very different kind of queen. She didn't really worry about jewels and all the fine stuff that came with being a queen. Her crown, which she was probably more proud of, was more of a symbolic crown, which was filled with things like, instead of jewels, like kindness, love, encouragement, and understanding. And I think all of us can work every day so that our crown, by being kind and loving to other people, are filled with those things too. So these are fun to have around. They're fun to wear. But remember, the more important crown you have is the one that you make for yourself out of love and kindness to other people. I also made, because Margaret is from Scotland, and I don't know, you guys might know, shortbread cookies are a Scottish thing, made especially with oatmeal, because Scotland has a lot of oatmeal. Porridge in the morning is very Scottish, I believe. So what I've done is I made the pan of it, and we've included the recipe, but I've made it so in a circle, and then I'm going to cut it. It's not that hard to cut, really, into a triangle, like the points on a crown. And I'll just slip one out onto my board. Now let me hold this up so that you can see it. See? Triangle shape. And then I have some raspberry jelly. And I'm going to put that on the base of the shortbread triangle like it was a jewel.
Like a ruby.
Like a ruby, yes. That's exactly what it looked like. See? So it looks like it has some, and it tastes really good on the shortbread. So it looks like it has some jewels. And then just decorate it a little bit more. I have some, don't know if you can see that in my hand, little tiny chocolate chips. And I'm going to put those in like that and further decorate it a little bit. So there you go. But what I've done after that is when you make these and you want to serve them to your family, you can put them together. I'm sorry, I'm eating the raspberry jam. And you can actually make them into like a circle or a half circle on a plate. So they look like Margaret's crown or a crown with jewels on it. And they're really tasty. And I hope you'll give it a recipe a try. We've included it in the email about the Sunday school lesson.
Now, I suspect that none of you is ever going to be a king or a queen. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you will grow up to be a king or a queen. If you do grow up to be a king or queen and you get to be crowned, give me a call. I would love to go to the ceremony when you get to be king or queen. Absolutely. But we all have different roles that we play, whether we're kings or queens, or whether we're teachers or doctors, mums or dads. And I want us to think about what Margaret tells us and shows us we should try to do, whatever our task is. And I want to read a passage from the Bible. It's actually from John's Gospel. I'm going to include it with the material that I send out in the email. And it goes like this. It was before Passover, and Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world and to return to the Father. He had always loved his followers in this world, and he loved them to the very end. Even before the evening meal started, the devil had made Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, decide to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that he had come from God and would go back to God. He also knew that the Father had given him complete power. So during the meal, Jesus got up, removed his outer garment, and wrapped a towel around his waist. He put some water into a large bowl. Then he began washing his disciples' feet and drying them with the towel he was wearing. And of course, that story about what Jesus did to his disciples is very similar to what Margaret did to the poor in her day in Scotland, that she cared for them. She actually used her own hands, her own time, her own talent to care for them. Now, whatever we do in our lives, maybe we play on a sports team, or maybe we play in a band, or maybe we're just part of a class, or maybe we act, maybe we dance. We all have different gifts, different abilities, and different roles that we play. Just like Margaret played a role as a mother and as a queen. But Margaret, in her life, tried to make sure that as she tried to figure out what it was that she was supposed to do as a mother and as a queen, she actually tried to think about what Jesus wanted her to do. In other words, not just to do what every other queen did, but to do things differently because Jesus was asking her to be a different kind of queen. So, whatever your role is, we always have a choice in our roles. We can just do things the way absolutely everyone else is doing them, and maybe that's going to be okay. But sometimes we may have to ask ourselves, is this really what Jesus wants me to do? Is this really what Jesus wants me to think? And is this really what Jesus wants me to be doing and to be saying? So that's a job that we all have to. I have to do that every day. And I think that's a job that you have to do every day as well. What does Jesus want us to do? So sometimes you've seen this phrase, what would Jesus do? So when you're faced with some of those questions, when you're carrying out one of the many different roles as a student or as a son or a daughter or as a friend or as a person who plays on a team or a person who plays an instrument, a person who's with a particular group of people, and you're doing things with that group of people, and you have to think, is this what Jesus wants me to do? Is this the best way for me to show my love for Jesus and my love for other people who are part of Jesus' family? So, what would Jesus do? Margaret asked that question and was a great queen because she chose to care for the poor. What does Jesus want each one of us to do? That's something for us to be thinking about and praying about so that we can be the best possible followers of Jesus. So we'll send out some material, some things for you guys to work on. There's some crafts, some tasty things for you guys to be eating. I'm looking forward to having a piece of that cookie in just a second or so, and some things for you guys to be reading and to be thinking about and praying about as we remember and celebrate Saint Margaret of Scotland. Thank you very much, folks, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye
Bye,
now.
guys.